Urgent laser death for Shaheds and missiles over Ukraine. Live on air. Fedorov revealed his trump cards to the world. Now everyone envies our air defense. An epic start, a total purge of Putin's regime. Something terrible is coming. Lukashenko is packing his bags. Moldova and Georgia are in the spotlight, a major liberation of territories. The Russian Federation was not prepared for this. Kremlin fortresses are collapsing one after another. The Ukrainian armed forces have switched off the enemy's military power. In the darkness of revenge, China tripped up Russia. A new war flared up like a match. A nuclear apocalypse could begin at any moment. South Asia won't be able to withstand it. Europe is alarmed by what is happening behind NATO's back, shaking even the most resilient. Is the bomb about to explode? All this in our episode Hell Point. Sensational. Laser weapons are already in the skies over Ukraine. The air shield has been erected. Zelensky said this to Putin right to his face. Russian missiles instantly turned into tin cans. Fedorov made this happen. The world is giving a standing ovation. Air defense has never been like this before. The protection of the sky is cooler than the Iron Dome. Panic is rising in the Kremlin offices. Kiev managed to do the shocking. Could it be that Russia's drone and missile terror has finally come to an end? Be the first to know.
In the sky, there's an An-28 equipped with laser guidance and a minigun on board. This is exactly how Ukrainian air defense is now fighting against Russian Shaheds, and these innovations are bearing fruit. On Thursday morning, the aggressor launched another combined strike on Ukraine using 420 Shaheds and 32 missiles. Only 46 Shaheds and 5 missiles reached their targets. The rest were shot down or suppressed. The high interception rate and excellent work of the air defense were also noted by the president of Ukraine.
More than 30 Russian missiles were shot down. Most of them were aimed specifically at the energy sector. We really managed to protect some very important facilities. There are also results regarding the Shaheds. Every night, that's how it is. Every night when our air defense has a sufficient supply of ammunition, when our partners fulfill what we have agreed upon. We have the capability to achieve exactly these kinds of results and interceptions.
Ukrainian air defense shot down all the anti-ship and cruise missiles. 2 Zircon missiles and 24 Kh-101 missiles. These are the latest missiles that the Russians are launching at Ukraine, practically straight off the assembly line.
The Kh-101 missiles, they come out of the Russian oven like hotcakes. Already, in fact, straight from the wheels, they start using them immediately. In January, we saw the use of missiles that had just come off the assembly line that same month, on the 26th.
The Russian Federation began using missiles produced in 2026 to strike Ukraine. And that's not because things are going well for them. The occupiers need to shut down Ukraine's energy sector at any cost, but thanks to the effective work of air defense, they have not achieved their goal. In addition to the timely delivery of PAC-3 missiles from our partners, the new Minister of Defense, Mikhailo Fedorov, and his team have implemented an after-action review system, which analyzes every Russian attack and enables decisions to be made to strengthen air defense.
Our main focus during the first month was air defense. As a rapid response to the intense shelling by the Russians, our task was to strengthen the air defense system. To achieve this, we implemented the after-action review system. Mikhailo Fedorov, Minister of Defense of Ukraine.
Over the past few weeks, the Air Force of the Armed Forces of Ukraine has started to operate more effectively. We managed to restructure certain aspects of the defense organization against massive Russian attacks. And these actions produced results. A significant increase in the percentage of enemy cruise missiles and UAVs shot down, which indicates an improvement in the effectiveness of our air defense.
It is clear that the after-action review currently being conducted by Fedorov's team with the Air Force and the mobile air defense units is absolutely beneficial for the changes that we then use during subsequent massive attacks to repel enemy drones and missiles. And therefore, in fact, I believe that there have been certain positive changes that have taken place. They have influenced the quality of the air defense forces' work today.
The Ministry of Defense has stated that this is only the beginning of systemic changes in the work of air defense. And not only that, changes are planned in the work of interceptors, mobile fire groups, and the short-range air defense component. And this means that Russia's massive attacks will be less effective.
Urgently, Lukashenko doesn't have much time left. Kyiv has taken a decisive course. The opposition is coming out of the shadows. The dictator's handshake was interrupted live on air. You have to see this. Belarus is preparing to be freed from Russian oppression. Moldova and Georgia are next. A clear signal. Putin is being locked away behind 7 locks. The danger no longer exists. Ukraine is leading the way. A historic moment. Don't miss the first details coming up next. While Russia tries to hold the front in Ukraine, the very geography of the war is beginning to change. Kyiv is becoming increasingly active in places where, until recently, Moscow's influence was considered unshakable. In Belarus, Transnistria, and Georgia.
Minimizing the influence of the Russian Federation within its borders is a security priority not only for Ukraine, but for the entire civilized world, and above all, for the European continent. That is why the goals of Ukraine, Europe, and the West as a whole are not absolutely identical, not the same.
Belarus is getting increasingly drawn into the war. It is from its territory that Russia launches drones at Ukrainian cities. At the same time, according to Volodymyr Zelensky, Ukraine has already destroyed facilities that provided control over these drones.
Modern relays for Shahed drones have appeared on the territory of Belarus. According to him, these are used for targeting and coordinating strikes on Ukraine.
But that's not all, because the dictators of these countries have signed a number of documents within the so-called Union State. Thus, Russia is slowly but surely absorbing Belarus.
The current international situation is tense, especially along the western borders. It is vital for us to develop allied relations and strategic partnership between Belarus and Russia.
At the same time, inside Belarus itself, resistance to Lukashenko's regime persists, holding new elections, constitutional reforms, supporting Ukraine, and pursuing a European path of development. All of these are goals of the Belarusian opposition.
Analyzing the capabilities of the Belarusian opposition, as well as those of the Russian opposition. Both the first and the second are puppet-like, artificial, they seem to exist. But in the totalitarian regimes of Lukashenko and Putin, without a doubt, they merely imitate some kind of activity.
A month ago, for the first time since 2020, a bilateral meeting took place between Volodymyr Zelensky and the leader of the Belarusian opposition, Sviatlana Tsikhanouskaya. So what could this mean?
This is good. According to the latest comments from Tsikhanouskaya herself, after this contact with the president of Ukraine, a sort of horizontal communication was established with the Ukrainian special services, who began to actively and not just on a one-off basis communicate with representatives of the Belarusian opposition in a working manner, in order once again to understand and interpret the mood.
Another potential point of change remains Transnistria. Weakened by economic and energy crises, the region has, for the first time in many years, found itself in the spotlight of Kyiv and its European allies.
For example, with weapons, military support, gas, and even electricity, Russia can't help with any of that. They simply can't right now. Of course, this is causing negative sentiments within Transnistria itself. Naturally, many people are starting to become seriously disillusioned with Putin's policies and the Russian Federation. Now, there are even serious discussions and opinions circulating in Transnistria that Putin has simply abandoned them.
At the same time, the European Union has issued an ultimatum to the Kremlin.
Russia has occupied many territories, and its troops are deployed in various regions, in particular in Georgia and Moldova. So yes, for lasting peace to be achieved, it must be clearly understood. They must withdraw their troops from all the occupied territories where they are currently stationed. Of course, some say that such demands are unrealistic. But let's be honest, the demands coming from Russia are generally unrealistic. In
European initiatives, there is an increasing demand for the withdrawal of Russian troops not only from Ukraine but also from Transnistria and even Georgia. In fact, what is being discussed is the formation of a new security system.
The configuration for such an awakening to reality among the residents of Transnistria is now as close as possible.
However, while Russia is effectively isolated in Transnistria, in Georgia it still maintains significant direct military presence, levers of influence in Abkhazia and in Kiev. In South Ossetia at the same time, keeping the rest of the country in a high.
Pertaining to the economy and various financial systems Dependence is the state of relying on or being controlled by someone or something else, often implying a necessity for external support and resources to maintain stability and continue operating effectively. There are a significant number of active players involved in the region at this moment. Georgia could become, one might suggest, something like a stable neutral zone.
And of course, the people of Georgia themselves are not satisfied with this.
I'm here for a very simple reason, to protect my European future and democracy in my country. We participated in the elections and they were clearly rigged. And so far, we've done everything we could to show that we want a European future.
We don't want to be part of Russia. We want to be part of Europe, and we belong to Europe.
The war is not only being fought on the battlefield. Today, the confrontation between Russia and the West is becoming increasingly evident beyond the borders of Ukraine as well. Ukraine, where the future security of the entire region is being decided. It finally happened. Ukrainian strikes reached Moscow's secret locations and burned everything down. The Kremlin is ablaze with vengeance. The assembly lines have stopped. The only fiber optics plant in the Federation has burned down. Our forces carried out a special operation that everyone thought was impossible. Motkinsk's pride lies in ruins. Putin didn't believe it until the very end. China is rubbing its hands together and making a fortune off Russia. If you want to wage war, you have to pay. The Celestial Empire has prepared a trap for the bunker dweller. She appreciated our deep strikes, which managed to set an irreversible process in motion on Russian territory. More on this in just a moment. The only fiber optics plant in Russia has been shut down for almost a year after a strike by Ukrainian drones. In the spring of 2025, a series of precise strikes by the Ukrainian armed forces put the plant out of commission, and since then, the plant has not resumed its operations.
The plant's production capacity was about 4 million kilometers of fiber optics per year, from which 24 Russian cable factories produced fiber optic cables. Now they are completely dependent on fiber imports from China.
Meanwhile, China is taking advantage of Russia's situation. Since the beginning of 2026, prices for Russian buyers have skyrocketed by 2.5 to 4 times. For example, the popular J652D fiber. At the beginning of 2025, it cost 16 yuan per kilometer. By the end of the year 25 and in January 26, it was already 40 yuan. And why did it become so expensive so suddenly? It's simple. It's because of the Russian side. There is enormous demand. In 2025 alone, the pseudo-empire bought up almost 60 million kilometers of fiber optic cable. And just for a moment, that's 10.5% of the entire global production. And to put it in perspective, it used to be no more than 1%.
Such a sharp increase in price is explained by the surge in demand. In particular, Russia and Ukraine began using fiber optic cables for drones, which can be launched up to 50 kilometers away. This makes drones invulnerable to electronic warfare. Suppression.
Chinese suppliers have switched to 100% prepayment, and the volume is in question, and Russian cable factories can no longer keep the old prices. As a result, everything will become more expensive, leasing dark fiber, laying new trunk lines and communication services. The main risk today is not even the price, but whether there will physically be enough fiber in the required volumes. According to experts' forecasts, the tension in the market will persist at least until 2027. All in all, with just one strike by Ukrainian drones, Russia was left without its own fiber, is now paying triple the price to the Chinese, and is facing a shortage for drones and the internet. And this is only the beginning, because Ukraine is systematically striking at Putin's war machine, right in the deep rear. Just in the last 2 weeks, the armed forces of Ukraine have successfully attacked several factories at once that work for the Russian military industry. In Saransk, a drone attacked the Elektro-Vypremlyak plant. In Dorogobush, Ukrainian drones destroyed a chemical plant where ammonium nitrate for explosives was produced. And in Udmurtia and Flaming, they attacked the Votkinsk plant, where they damaged the production line for the Iskander-M missile. The strike on the Votkinsk plant turned out to be extremely painful. In particular, it was after this attack that the Kremlin began talking about how Putin wants clarity regarding the protection of the Russian military-industrial complex.
We have a large country, there are many sites that need to be protected, but it can't be that wherever they fly in, that's where they hit and cause damage. Is the only place we can protect so far? Is it Moscow? But even there, things aren't so smooth, says a source in the Kremlin. Rumor has it the president wants clarity on when it will be possible to protect all the necessary enterprises in the Russian rear. And
The questions regarding the precise strikes by the armed forces of Ukraine should be considered quite
When we carefully consider the intricate web of circumstances involved and the extensive evidence that has been presented throughout this case, it becomes undeniably clear that every single action taken was entirely reasonable and appropriate, which ultimately makes the final outcome of this situation completely, thoroughly, and fully justified in every possible respect. Against the air defense systems, perhaps there is even some kind of arrangement with certain Russian. He claimed that they were there for a box of vodka, that they failed, were unprepared, just went off partying.
The effectiveness of the Ukrainian armed forces strikes on the Russian Vypk does not decrease due to the so-called surprise effect. And
the factory, it stands as it did before, and if we have the opportunity and the means, whether it's a military factory or an oil refinery, an oil storage facility, that's where the attack is directed. And we record it, and every time, it's especially satisfying. This is what surprises the Russians.
Ukraine has hit Russian defense sites multiple times, so the element of surprise no longer justifies these strikes. Surprise, that is.
Well, and we have a careful statement about this, supposedly from Budanov, back when he was the head of the main intelligence directorate and not yet working in the president's office. He said that we know how they carry out repairs, we see all of it, and when the work is almost finished and they're ready to cut the ribbon at the opening of the repaired facility, we deliver the next strike.
So, the questions from the Russian authorities who can't understand why, after several years of systematic attacks, Russia hasn't figured out how to counter these attacks are quite logical. That's why, as the Russians themselves say, it's not all so clear-cut here, since it's still not clear whether they can counter the attacks. Or, for some other reasons, they don't want to.